Hi everyone, welcome to week 9 of your technical math class. This week we're going to be covering the last chapter in the textbook, and that is statistics. So just a couple of notes before we look at the material this week. Since this is the last week of chapters that we'll be covering, that means during week 10 you've got that entire week to work on preparing for your final exam as well as turning in any missing work. So if you have any regular assignment or test that you have not taken or that you need to redo for me, please make sure you turn those in. Keep in mind that the discussions are the only things that you cannot turn in late, but the rest of it I will take. So make sure that you go back and look and see if there's anything that you're missing. Maybe it has a 0 in there, maybe you turned it in, but maybe there's something wrong with it and you had to fix it. So make sure you're reading my notes as well and check those. So let's take a look at chapter 15. Like I said, it's on statistics, and the first thing that it's going to touch on is the different types of graphs that are used to show statistical information. So the first type of graph that you're going to be looking at is a circle graph. And they've given you I've given you an example here of a circle graph. You might also hear it called a pie chart because each little piece looks like a piece of pie. And the interesting thing about a circle graph is how you find these different percents and how you actually make a circle graph. Now, making a circle graph by hand is not necessarily something that you're going to be doing on a regular basis, but just understanding where these percents come from can be very useful. So if you look at the types of movies for this example, you can see we have 4 for comedy, 5 for action, 6 for romance, 1 for drama, and 4 for sci-fi. So if you add all those together, you're going to get 20. So there's 20 different votes, so to speak, for types of movies. So the way that they figure out the percent is to take the amount for each particular category. So for example, for comedy, it's going to be 4 out of the total, which is 20. So 4 out of 20 is 20%. So that's where this 20% is coming from. And that's how they did it for each of the percents. So they will talk about that a little bit in the book this week. So I just kind of wanted to simplify it a little bit for you. Now, the same data can also be displayed in what's called a bar graph. So here's a bar graph. A bar graph is different from a histograph. If you see all the lines touching, crammed together, that's considered a histogram. This is a bar graph. So there is bars of different heights that represent the different numbers depending on what the scale is, in this case the number of people and the different types of movies. But there is that space between each bar. That's what makes it a bar graph. Like I said, if they're all crammed together, it's a different type of graph. And then finally, here's an example of a line graph. Here's where they're showing 2 different pieces of information. This is different data this time. We're looking at the number of days and the number of facts that this person got correct. So typically a line graph is going to show information that has some sort of a connection. In this case, it's a change over time. So that's what they're trying to show you. And then you connect everything. It doesn't have to be a straight line, but you do connect each point to point to point. And then the final thing in this first section is where we put all this data, how we accumulate it all. And here's an example of a frequency distribution table. So we're basically keeping track of it all before we use it in a graph. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of what a frequency distribution table might look like. Now, it's really important to understand, how to read the data, because then you're going to do other things with it. So the next section talks about basically 3 things that you're going to do with data: the mean, the median, and the mode. The mean is the average. The mean is the number that is in the middle. And the mode is the number that happens most often. So I've given you an example of how to find the mean, median, and mode for the same set of data. So make sure you take a look at that. I feel like some of the information that I put in my slides makes it a little bit more simple to understand than the information that was in the textbook. So just kind of FYI. And then the material goes on to talk about the range, standard deviation, and probability. Now, those are all topics that are a little more difficult. So as you go through those, if you have problems or questions with them, make sure that you're reaching out to me. And as always, have a great week.